Hello and welcome to yet another deck preview. I saw a very positive response to the last one, and so we're going to be looking at Alfred, or well, Royals in particular, today. So, the deck itself will be Alfred, and now before we go into the deck, there are some things I want to mention. I did start off with more of these conventional builds that you've been seeing in Japanese lists, but after playing against especially a lot of OTT and realizing how strong it is, I've adjusted it a little bit, and it's also an adjustment that's been made by Japanese players as well in order to adapt to certain conditions, because in the format of standard right now, the problem is that the value of units, units with good skills, isn't as important as units that can make good numbers. And this is something I said in a previous video that got some backlash, but I will repeat that because it is currently holding true. But anyway, let's go into this deck profile, because we have quite a lot to go over, as you can see, and there are some things that you might not agree with, but I will go over them as we go along. So, first off is our starter, Gleim. Same start as always, on right draw 1, nothing too special. Every starter in the game is the same so far, for standard at least. Then we have our main grade 3s, so 4 King of Knights Alfred, which is the VR, and 4 Soul Saver Dragon, which is a triple rare. King of Knights Alfred's first skill is an act Vanguard circle once per turn. You can blast 1, and then you search a Blaster Blade from your deck, call it to Rearguard circle, and for that turn that unit gets plus 5k and you shuffle your deck. Second skill is during your turn, when you have a Blaster Blade on your Rearguard circle, he gets plus 10,000 power, meaning that he'll be attacking for 23 on his own, and the Blaster Blade will be attacking for at least 15 from just the interaction between Alfred and Blaster Blade. Now, this was the VR that people really laughed at the beginning, and it didn't seem as flashy as Perfect Riser or Dragonic Waterfall, and it makes sense, but the role of Alfred isn't the same as Waterfall. That's Soul Saver's role, and we're going to go over that a bit later. So honestly, Alfred is a perfect grade 3 to ride into and stay on for 1 or 2 turns, because he gets you an extra unit for a single counterblast, and he builds up good numbers. With Force, it's going to be attacking for 25, with boosters even more, over 30 at least, and so he also attacks for 23 himself, meaning that you don't need to put any forces on your Vanguard circle, you can focus them on your Rearguard circles, because this will almost always be 23 minimum, and Soul Saver will also, you're only going to really go into Soul Saver if you don't misride the moment you can use her skill, so, that's an important part. Going into Soul Saver, however, has an act skill, Soul Blast 5. If you do, you choose 6 units, and during this turn they get plus 15,000 power. This is not a once per turn skill, so you can use it more than once, but in all the games I've tested, I was only able to pull it off one time. Sometimes I'd have 8 or 9 soul, but even then the game would end before then, and that was it. Her other skill is when she attacks, you soul charge 1, which is also quite important, and something that I myself sometimes forget while playtesting, but it's quite important for some of the other cards in this deck. So those are main grade 3s. I run a total of 8. There's also Alfred early, I'll talk about him a bit later, but for now I think this is a solid lineup for grade 3s. Moving on, for grade 2s, we have 4 Blaster Blade in order to call him from our Alfred skills, and then 4 Akane and 3 Jaren. So Blaster Blade skill, first one is Vanguard Circle. If you have 4 more Rearguards, he gets a crit. That skill you won't be using that much. There are some situations that you might want to push for damage a bit early, but most of the time you don't really care about it that much. His second skill is when he's cold or ridden, you can blast 1 and Soul Blast 1 if you do retire one of your opponent's Rearguards. In that sense, this is not necessarily used for its skills, but just for its name, because you don't have any countercharge in Royals right now. So in Standard, there's no countercharge for Royals, and therefore the Soul is also fairly important. You want to be using it carefully because you want to leave it for Soul Saver, but you can afford to use 1 or 2 skills that Soul Blast. So if you need to, you can use this, but it's the counterblast that's a bit more tight, and you might want to use Alfred's skill instead to just hit for nice numbers, for at least a 15, potentially 25 with a Force. Moving on, in my opinion, the best grade 2 of the deck, and the reason why I actually want to build this deck in real life, is Akane. When she's cold or ridden, you counterblast 1, and if you do, you search from your deck a Pongo and call it to any Rearguard circle, and then you shuffle your deck. Her second skill is Vanguard and Rearguard Circle. When she's boosted by a high beast, during that battle she gets plus 3k. Very important for making numbers, so very good because she's a good right target, because you can then search out a Pongo, get yourself a soul charge as we'll go along, and then hit for nice numbers, and so even if you call her or ride her, it's quite good. Last grade 2 is the 3 of Joran. Skill is very simple. When he attacks a Vanguard, if you have 3 or more rearguards, for this battle he has plus 5k power, meaning he's at least 15k attacker, and then with boosts you will usually break 20, with force an additional plus 10. Now, so those are our grade 2s. I think this is a good number. There is another grade 2 that you can potentially play, but I'll go over that before we go into the match. Then for our grade 1s, this is where things get a bit different. So here's what I call the staples, the 4 Marin and the 4 Pongal, but then the Morgana and the Lion Mane Stallion are not so usual, especially the Morgana, but I'll go over why we play them in a second. First are the staples, so Marin, 4 times, has a rearguard once per turn skill. When your rearguard appears in the same column as this unit, you can counterblast 1. If you do, draw 1, and he gets plus 3k power. So you can use this whether you call from deck or call from hand. Counterblast 1 becomes an 11k attacker or booster, but more importantly draws you an extra card, which is very important and therefore a very good resource engine. Then we have 4 Pongal. If it's called in the same column where another unit already is, then you soul charge 1. If the soul charged unit is a trigger, he gets plus 5k. So you get a soul charge, but if you happen to soul charge a trigger, very unfortunate, then you get an extra 5k, meaning he's a 13k, and that's very, very nice. Now looking at Morgana, the reason why we play Morgana is, well, let's go over the skill first. Rearguard Circle, when it attacks a Vanguard, you can Soul Blast 1, then for each grade that your Vanguard has, for this battle, this gets plus 3k. So if your Vanguard is grade 3, it gets plus 9k. Why is that important? 9 plus 8 is going to be hitting for 17. What are Protect and Axel Vanguards at? 12k power, meaning that this on its own will be hitting for magic numbers against OTT especially, but also Novas, which are both dominant decks right now in Standard. And you know, 17 on its own might not be much, but you can also turn it into a 28 together with Marin, and that is hitting everything for a magic number. You know, if you use Soul Saver that turn, you're getting a plus 30k buff, so you can already imagine what kind of numbers are going to be building up from this Morgana, and that's why Japanese players have been teching in Morgana, and in my opinion it's a really good tech. I played at 3 because I also want to play 3 of the Lion Mane Stallion, whose skill is when you have 4 or more rearguards, he gets plus 3k. So this is normally just a 10k booster, but what's important is that it is a high beast, and as we know, Akane, she gets plus 3k when she's boosted by a high beast, meaning this hits for 23 without triggers, which asks for at least 15k shield from every single type of deck, meaning that this will be hitting for magic numbers against Force, Protect, and Axel, you know, on its own, without using any counterblast, which is really, really nice. So both of these cards are really good for creating magic numbers, and that's why I decided to play both of them. I'll go over the other options a bit later. First we go into the triggers, which are very standard. 4 heals, 4 perfect guard draw triggers, and 8 crits, so very standard, and so this is the deck itself. However, there are some cards that we play, or rather don't play actually, that are still good cards and are worth talking about. First is Alfred early. The reason why I don't play Alfred early is because I don't think games really prolong enough, and his skill is a little bit of a risk in case you didn't ride the Blaster Blade or don't have one in your hand, and I think with Alfred, King of Knights Alfred is just a little bit more reliable. Next is Conjurer of Mithril. I used him at first, but I dropped him because it's a good card, because when you call it from hand, you can blast 1, Soul Blast 1, and search for any grade 2 from your deck and call it. And that's really nice because you can combo that into Akane, and then be able to call a Pongal, and then make up for that lost soul, which is nice, but I felt that losing the counterblast is actually quite heavy. And so that's why, because we don't have any kind of countercharge, I wanted to leave those counterblasts for Akane and for Alfred, and so I decided to cut him as well and run Joran instead, as you see here, because he hits for a nice 15k, which you can hit, you know, for at least 5k on anything. And then I used to play Alan, who in my opinion is a really good card. When you call him, you can blast 1, and then you call a card from your hand with the same or lower grade than your Vanguard, and if you call something, you draw a card and he gets plus 3k, which normally is a good card. However, it's just the skill does not balance out the ability to make good numbers, and so that's what I felt was lacking when I was running him and Conjurer of Mithril, because he's also 9k, so I cut them both for, you know, this which is 10k for grade 2s, and then this which is, you know, they're both, this is 8k, this is 7k, but it's a 10k booster in most times, and this, you know, attacks for at least 17, which hits for magic numbers against Protect and Axel, and I can, with, you know, a proper boost, which also will also hit for magic numbers against against other clans as well. And the final card is Wingle, which was often the 2 or 3 card slot for grade 1s in Royals. It just gives your Blaster Blade plus 5k when it's in the same column as a Blaster Blade, which is nice, but again, I felt that Lion Stallion does a bit more and a bit more flexibly. I felt a bit restricted by this for having to have Blaster Blade all the time, which I don't sometimes because you get damage denied and then you can't do the Alfred skills. So this is the deck and some of the other cards that you could play potentially if you wanted to, and so now we're going to go into a game to look at how the deck works with some post-commentary as well. So going into this matchup, it's going to be a matchup between the Royals that you just saw as well as OTT on the other side, run by none other than Tony from Yellow Card Vanguard, or Toku as he goes by his username. So I do my mulligan, which ends up quite good. I get the Pongal or the Morgana for the grade 1 ride, but I end up going for the Pongal. So going into the 1 ride, I draw into a trigger, not the best, but still alright. Check my first damage because my opponent was actually great stuck, which is a bit unfortunate, and he does G assist, revealing his hand, and does get the grade 1, so doesn't stick too far. So one of the, you know, obviously G assisting does suck, but even then, with OTT, you can sort of recuperate from it, and that makes it alright. Here I was just asking about Circle Magus' skill and the timings and stuff, and we just get 1 damage. So, going into turn 2, I run into the Akane, activate the skill to search out for one of my 2 remaining Pongals, because I had one at the start of the game, and then I damage checked one. Here I was just checking that Pongal actually needs to be called behind something in the same column to get the soul charge. So I get the soul charge, I attack for 1, and he takes the damage and loses the Silent Tom. Now continuing on, he does go into the Daughter and rides from the circle. Magus' skill, gets the extra draw. So as you can see, he's already got like what, 7 or 8 cards in hand, even though he GSs, which is really good. He gets the crit, I get myself a draw, which is really nice, and the heals, so I basically recuperate from that and end up with an extra card in my hand. So now my hand is looking really healthy and overall in a good shape. I ride into the Alfred and get myself a forest marker on the rearguard circle, and now I call a Marin so that I can use a skill, activate the Alfred to call the Blaster Blade, and now I'm able to activate the Marin to count +1, draw 1, and get the extra 3k on the Marins. Now that column is going to be hitting for quite a lot. I call the Jaren as well as the Lion Mane, and now all of my field is basically hitting for really nice numbers because my Vanguard's got the plus 10k buff, my left rearguard's got the 5k buff and Blaster Blade, 3k buff and Marin as well, 5k buff over here as well as the 3k buff from the Lion Mane, so this should be hitting for a 25 if I'm not mistaken while he's still on grade 2, which is overall really good. So it hits for 1 damage, I attack with the Alfred for a total of 31 because it gets the plus 10k buff from Alfred's skill, get a crit hitting for 2 damage, he gets 1 damage trigger which is good for him, get a plus 10k on the Blaster Blade, currently swinging for I believe 35 on his own plus the 11, that should be 46, and he does guard with a 30 because he was on 19 to begin with, so that's 39, so it is enough. I end my turn, he goes into the CO Amaterasu, does activate her skill to draw 1 and then scry the top card as well, and get a plus 5k buff from actually being able to look at it. Now continuing on, he calls 2 Silent Toms, and he goes back and activates both of their skills to give them the plus 6k buff for each unit, and he goes the Gemini as well as one of the Farfai Magus, I believe, to scry the top card, get another 5k on the CO Materasu, and now attacks for the Vanguard with a plus 10k buff. I believe that I will say no guard to this one. He gets the crit, putting me to already 4 damage, but he doesn't get a second one, so I take the first, I get a damage trigger and the Blaster Blade, putting myself at 23 right now. So these Toms will still be hitting, but I can obviously choose which one I want to take and which one I can ignore. But even then, it's still, he can still, you know, hit my rears obviously. So he targets the Blaster Blade. I let that pass because I really don't mind at this point. So he attacks with the other Tom, I believe to the Vanguard, but I'm not too sure if I follow that. Nope, he attacks to the rear it seems, and I do guard that with a 15k as that one did not get any trigger power. So now I don't remember how much soul I have, so just giving a check, but I think I do have at least 5. So I ride into the soul saver, give myself an extra force on the right circle, this time call the Morgana, which is going to come in clutch this time, and now activate the Marin skill to count as 1 and draw 1 because I called the Morgana in front, and now get just adding some power bonuses and then activating soul saver skill to Soul Blast 5 and give everyone a plus 15k buff as denoted by the power on top over there. So now everybody's going to be hitting for really nice numbers. As you can see, I've got the Dream column of Morgana and Marin up there as well, and so overall everything's doing really good. So normally Morgana wouldn't be able to use a skill, but because when Soul Saver attacks, I'm able to Soul Charge, I can still use Morgana's skill in this situation, which is really good because my opponent's at 5 damage. I want to be pushing for big numbers, so I get myself the crit from the Soul Charge. This is not the damage check, so this was the Soul Charge on attack. He calls down the Protect marker, I get myself a draw, give the power to the Jaron and get a crit. Also still debating, but I think I end up giving it to the Jaron after calculating some power, because in the end the Jaron wasn't hitting for as much as the Morgana column was, which is kind of surprising, but that's how it is. And so I attack with the Morgana column, Soul Blasting 1 to get the extra plus 9k, hitting for this beautiful magical number of the aforementioned 28 plus the 30, meaning it's 58 plus the 10 from force, 68, which is overall really good. And I believe it doesn't have that many cards left in hand, so I think, yep, he does have to take it, and that is game. So that concludes this deck preview for the Alfred deck. Again, if you want to go for something a bit more standard, you can obviously replace both the Liamin and the Morgana with Alan and Wingle, because those are the more standard choices, but I think in this current format, and right now with the priority on making good numbers and being able to hit everything for magic numbers, it's much more important to prioritize that aspect instead, and that's why I went with this build instead. So I hope you guys did enjoy it, and do look forward to the next one. Next one I do plan to do is OTT, which we saw as an opponent today, so I hope you guys do look forward to that. But do make sure to click the bell button, as well as check out the social medias in the description. I have started doing Twitch recently. I haven't done it since the first day that I did it, but I do plan to come back to it. I've just had a really busy week. And join the Discord channel if you haven't already. But on that note, that's going to be it for me today. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.